Hi everybody, we're back. This is another episode of Learning Happy Hour, and we're so excited because this is a special episode where we're going to once again have a look behind the scenes around the BPA. So with us is our good friends Sam and Andrew, and they're going to showcase some of the changes that they've been making in the BPA. So I'm really excited to hear from you guys today and find out what's new with the BPA. I love the BPA!
We're glad to be here too.
Guys, what are we going to talk about today?
Today we'll be talking about some of the new additions we've added. We added new training educational links as a learn more button in the BPA report itself. The other one is quick protocol, wherein we have the ability to identify through BPA, are you using quick protocol? If so, you need to block it. And the other one is what was the one? Okay, end of life software. So just an indication if any of the firewall is running an old version which is not supported. The other one is log retention period. So fundamentally, if you're saving logs, let's say traffic and thread logs and so on for more than necessary time, now you have the option to see that in the BPA report and tweak it in your configuration for whatever time you want. Those are the things what I will be sharing. And Andrew?
Yes. Hey, Jason. Hey, Mitch. Thanks for having us on again. So I'll be covering a new PDF executive summary report that we've added to the zip file. And I'll also be going over the best practice assessment API that we've recently released as a beta.
So what's the first thing on our agenda? What's the first thing we're going to talk about?
The first thing we'll be working through the training links, which we added recently as a Learn More links button. Let me share my screen. Probably, we can walk through them then. You see here, this green button here, the Learn More. So this is the one which we recently added. And then this button and the drop down here, the links are very specific for that particular page. So let's put it this way, right? As soon as we open the BPA report, we land in this page, which is the heat map section, a summary view. And then here I have 4 links. One of this is reviewing the adoption summary. The next is prioritizing the best practice changes, transitioning to the best practice changes, and the other one is e-learning BPA videos. This is basically...
Yeah. I've seen those in the Learning Center. That's great.
So this it seems like, as you said, it's relevant to the page you're on, so it's context sensitive.
It is indeed.
That's cool.
So if I take you to the, let's say, serial number and basis view, and then there's only no drop down as you see. I click this and I'm landing to a TechPub space because I just want our users to be using just the relevant documents, what they want to see at that particular space. So that's really helpful. The reason why we got that in here is we would have heard, I ran a BPA report, what next, right? Kind of a thing. So every customer is in a particular state of security adoption, but they have an end goal. But then how do you get there? How do you get there safely? In addition to that, as I just mentioned, the links here in each page is very specific. At the same time, a user may want to know, hey, I clicked the link, but I don't know in which tab, which page I got that. We have this left nav section, Learn More, where we have given all the possible links which we want to help our users, because if they want to see it in one space, we have it in there. And I think we have captured all the TechPub space, transition to safely best practice, and also e-learning videos.
Having this in context and in the tool itself, right, that saves them a ton of time and hassle. I don't know, it's like trying to cook food and you've got the recipe on the back of the box kind of thing, right? You just flip it over and like, oh yeah, that's how you do that.
The next one will lead me to a quick protocol. So it's talking to Mitch
like a fast protocol?
It is fast.
Oh, you're saying the Google QUIC.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Which, if those of you watching aren't familiar with this one, you can find it in the application database, and it stands for Quick UDP Internet Connections. And what Google has done is they've taken SSL and removed TCP. So it's SSL kind of modified to run over UDP. And you might be thinking, well, that's a connectionless protocol, unreliable. Well, in our switched network infrastructures today, it works very well. And it's quicker, but because it's not standards-based, well, what's the problem with that?
No, I think you were right on track. Thanks. So the beauty is it gets us efficiency, right? I mean, it's a combination of SSL, UDP, what you just mentioned, primarily developed by the Google for, efficient communication, reduce the latency and so on. But then, since it has its proprietary protocol, we can't decrypt it. When we cannot decrypt it, we know we cannot see the underlying applications, underlying threads. So we're losing the visibility.
Yeah.
So
users could be uploading to like Google Drive, their personal Google Drive, for example, data that shouldn't be exfiltrated, or they could be downloading malware and the firewall is protecting them.
Exactly. The best way to see this is basically, in any firewall logs, we can just see if there's a quick protocol, just search for application equals QIC. And then we can see, oh yeah, in our network, our users are using quick. And then the best way to do is, block the quick protocol. So why are we blocking it, right?
Yeah. Does that break my Google Drive?
It doesn't. Basically, if you're blocking quick protocol, the application layer on the client end will fall back to the SSL TLS protocol. So it takes care of it, and then now we get the visibility into it. We can decrypt and identify the traffic. This is one of the new features, right, in the recent code. We just wanted to make sure our users know this, learn about it, and also as you can see here in my screen, you're able to see it, right? Mm-hmm. So we have a check here saying quick app denial rule. Basically, what we're looking for is you may have hundreds of policies, but then we want our users to have one security policy right on the top, even before the permit rules, with quick as an app defined, and block it. So if any traffic, even before it passes through, it makes sure it's not quick, falls back to SSL, TLS, and then it's inspected.
So you're gaining visibility by not using quick.
That's right.
Because the applications will use standard SSL and with the decryption policy enabled. So you're kind of, the guidance here is don't use quick from a security perspective, because
Very true.
If you're blind, you're not secure, right?
Exactly. The next one was, let's say, end-of-life software.
Oh,
okay.
Interesting.
What does that mean?
So that's a good question, right? So let me go to heat map section, device info here. I want to show you. I'm running on a 7.0.12 version firewall, and then the BPA is now able to catch that it's an old version. It's not just an old version, but it's not supported by the company. The reason why I say that is, many a times we miss out noticing, we may have firewalls remotely located, globally located in a grocery store or whatnot, right? And then
under a desk.
And then, we may not see if some of those are up to date or not having a consistent way of ensuring all are up. But if at all we run into a problem and, we want support on it, it's not supported because it's an old version. One thing, and the second thing is, security updates, vulnerability updates on software version. It's always, not just features, right?
Yeah.
It's not just features. It's also patches of some security vulnerabilities and so on. So we honestly want you to be in a stable and newer versions and not really, really old. I think here we just want to highlight in red saying, okay, this particular device is really old and 7.0 is not supported. So one other one which I wanted to bring before I pass it on to Andrew is log retention. So let me show you. So this is a new check we added. It's a note. So what we are trying to say is, if you see here, log retention for traffic on this box was 885 days. Log retention on threat was 865 days for config and system. There's many more. If we run the CLI command for this, there's a lot more DBs, and then you can get to see how many days there are in the system, right? Just the logs on the system, on the firewall itself, not about what's being sent out.
Can I just clarify my understanding then? So this is the fact that your log retention value is now displayed in the BPA where it was not before?
It was not. Yeah, it was not before. It's a new check. We are also displaying what is log retention. And the prime reason why we are doing this is we want our customers to know where are your logs being saved for more time. If you think you're let's say for traffic, you're saving for 885 days and this is more, you can just allocate that quota of log retention to another database. So you can save that because there's only X amount, right, for a particular platform. And if you believe you want to allocate a little more, now this is giving you information. In your environment, your traffic logs has so many days of retention. You can customize this so you can allocate that extra bandwidth to another database.
So this is great because the BPA is really, it's multifaceted in that it's an educational tool. And what I like about what we're doing here with this is you guys are looking at the security configuration, so like the quick protocol and that kind of thing. But you're also looking at device configuration and the implication of that in terms of how that might affect workflow, and in this case, log retention.
So I think I'm good. I wanted these to share today, and I'll have Andrew to share about a couple points.
Thanks, Sam Shode, and thanks, Jason. Thanks, Mitch, for having us back on the podcast. We're excited to be able to share some of the new features that have been added to the BPA. So first, I'm going to cover a new deliverable that's included within the zip bundle that you download. And then after that, I'm going to talk about the best practice assessment as a service. So basically a REST API that we recently released as a beta.
When you say the PDF summary, is that the thing that I normally see in the customer support portal that I have to go back to see? Now it comes down as an offline version of that?
Yeah, so we were heavily inspired by the PDF summary that was included in the customer support portal. That one was generated on the client side, but we wanted to be able to include it as an additional file within that zip bundle. So we ended up writing some logic to generate it on the server side, so that way it's always included in there. But going forward, when you go to CSP and you look at your preview and historical data, and you want to actually generate the summary, you'll be getting this new report.
Okay.
Yep. So this is the BPA executive summary. So a lot of this data should look familiar if you've already seen the HTML report. It starts off with the BPA summary. So we can see the how the BPA results look when you aggregate by the CISSP capabilities. We also have the aggregation of the BPA results according to NIST categories.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah. And then
I was about to ask where the definitions of each of those terms come from, and I saw the link underneath, and then you said CIS.
Yeah, that's right. Cool. So there's also the links underneath. So if you wanted to go and look at some of the more information about those CISSP capabilities, you could click on that link. If you want to look more into the security controls and the categories that NIST provides, you can go to this link here.
So let's say you did a migration, or you've used some of our transformation services. One of the early steps is put your like vulnerability protection and anti-spyware in alert only mode to get a baseline understanding. But if you leave it that way, you might score well on overall, but you'd fail at the BP adoption.
Right. Yep.
All right, cool.
That's exactly right. So you can see here, the overall adoption is just checking to see, have you enabled these capabilities? But then what you're really striving for is not only enabling them, but also enabling them and configuring them according to our best practices. So with that prevention mindset.
How many executives have you guys shown this to, and what was their feedback?
This is a brand new one.
Okay, so
hot
off the presses.
We just rolled this out last week. So
okay,
yeah.
I'm sure that
it smells new.
Let's get that new car smell.
Yeah.
So the next thing I wanted to share with you guys was the best practice assessment API. So it's a REST API that we just recently released as a beta, but we're looking for users who are interested in early access, who want to try it out and give us feedback and how we might be able to, make any tweaks and make it more useful. But the idea is, instead of having to upload an entire tech support file and then you get back, a complete, HTML deliverable, you can just use the PanOS XML API to generate the pieces of the tech support file that we actually use for the BPA. So, the running configuration, system info, license info, and you submit that to the API, and then what you get back is is JSON data. So it's the underlying data that we typically use to build the best practice assessment report. But from there, you can take that data and ingest it into your own platform. And I know we were talking a little bit earlier about, for some use cases, there may be a check in the report that doesn't make sense, with your environment or based on your context. And so this could be a way for you to take that data and, exclude things that aren't relevant to you. It's totally customizable once you have the data. So let me go ahead and share. I have a Postman collection to kind of go over the different, the workflow for how you'd actually use. The first thing that you would do is you would just start out with actually generating a PAN-OS API key so that you can make the subsequent requests to the lab device to get the information that we need. So then from there, I would take that API key and I would use it to collect the running configuration on that device. So it's just looking at this is the API endpoint on one of our firewalls, and we're just looking for a show config command here. And then making another call to get the system information. One more call here to get the system time, and we're really just collecting this because we need the time zone information for some of the checks when we're doing comparisons between dates. And then lastly is the license info on that device. And so you take all of that information and you include it in the payload. So when you make a post request to our best practice assessment API, you're including that XML running configuration, the system info, license info, and system time. And when you make that request, you're going to get back a task ID because what this does is it triggers a background job on our server to do the processing. So you can take that task ID and then you can just check for the results to see when that task is ready. So once the task is finished processing, you'll get back a payload which has all of the best practice data as JSON. So in this case, we can see the task is complete, and then within the results, we have the version of the BPA that was used to generate this data, as well as the detailed adoption data, summarized adoption data, the best practice assessment data, and the timestamp of when this data was actually generated. So if we start with the adoption data, this is a list of JSON objects where each of those objects represents one of the security policies that we've parsed out of your configuration. And so in this case, we can see here, we break it out into the actual configuration on that policy. So we can see, what was the name of the rule, what was the action, location, all of the information that you normally find in the report, as well as the metrics. So these are all the numerators and denominators that we use to calculate those adoption metrics.
So the 0 there means they haven't done any adoption, right? It's not enabled.
Yeah, that's right. So we could see here, for example, antivirus profile enabled. This is just talking about normal adoption. So whether or not this rule has an antivirus profile that's applied to the policy. And then you'll see one right underneath it that ends with _BP mode. And that's the stricter threshold, right, where not only are you applying that profile, but also is that profile configured according to best practice. The next section is the adoption summary. So in case you don't want to have to go through and aggregate all of that data yourself, we do some aggregation for you here. So we'll group the rules by location, source zone, and destination zone. So that way, if you have multiple rules that are rolling up within these groups, you'll see some of these numbers change. And then lastly is the BPA data. And so in this case, we break out or we organize all of the checks based on the PAN-OS top nav categories. And so in this case, it's objects, device, policies, network. So if we wanted to look at objects, decryption profile, for example, within here we'll have a list of all of our decryption profiles that we've parsed from this config. And we can see here, this is the configuration for one of the profiles, so we can see the name, and this is all of the information that you typically find within one of those cards in the HTML report, but just available as JSON data instead. One last endpoint I forgot to share was if you're interested in the documentation as well, we have an endpoint for the docs. So this is just showing all of the best practice assessment documentation we have. So things that you typically find in the report, the description of what the check is looking for, our rationale for recommending that check, and then references for learning more.
So you could potentially integrate this into a ticketing system. So if you want to allocate, go improve this rule or the logging of all my firewalls, assign it to an operator, and then all the how-to documentation is included with that.
True. Yeah. In a way, yeah.
That's right. So the idea is, I mean, you can take this data and ingest it into your own system and integrate it in a way that works for your workflow.
Seamless.
Now, this is beta, is that correct?
Yes, this is currently beta, but we're looking for more users who want early access to play around with it. And so if you're interested in that, you can just send an email to bpa@paltonetworks.com, and we will get you set up with an API token that you can use, as well as some quick start documentation and the Postman collection that I just walked through to show you how to actually use this workflow.
I can imagine there's quite a few people who are looking at the BPA, excited about it, and want to do even more with it. So I can imagine that you might get some emails as a result of people watching this. Thank you guys so much for sharing and letting us know what's up with the BPA. And these are all some exciting features that folks can start taking advantage of. And just a quick reminder to everybody that whenever you do a commit,
Run a BPA.
run the BPA.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for watching this episode of Learning Happy Hour. At Palo Alto Networks, we are strong advocates of continuous learning, and we hope you are too. To continue learning about our fantastic products and services, you can attend a class with one of our authorized training centers, or you can self-study about these products and services through our digital e-learning courses. And if you like this episode of Learning Happy Hour, consider watching this one or this one, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thanks again for watching.